My name is Lionel Carter. I'm a retired structural engineer and a widower, living year-round in a cedar house at Seabright Cove. My late wife, Mara, used to say a home should listen before it speaks. We built this place to do exactly that, low to the wind, wide to the light, and honest to the shoreline. She's gone 3 hurricane seasons now, but the house still keeps the promises we tucked into it. On a clear Tuesday, while the tea was steeping and a tide chart lay open to the week, my phone buzzed. It was my son-in-law, Chase Morton, a man who prefers declarations to conversations. Leo, we're 35 minutes out. Nora's driving with me. A dozen, maybe 14 of my colleagues behind us. 2 weeks. We'll need rooms, espresso pods, gluten-free snacks, fresh linens. You'll be a lifesaver. He hung up before my exhale reached the end of its sentence. I set the phone down and watched the water fold and lace. Then I opened the kitchen drawer labeled Seabright Documents. The house isn't in my personal name. Years ago, Mara and I placed it inside the Carter Coastal Stewardship Foundation, simple, boring, and sturdy. We paired that with a conservation easement protecting the dune grasses and the dark sky rules during sea turtle season. 3 papers matter in that binder. A guest license for any non-family sleeping past sundown, a noise and occupancy notice tied to the fire code and the easement, and a standing contract with Blue Tide Protective for quiet civil standbys if the weather turns human. I laid the binder on the table, poured tea, and waited for the drive to fill with unfamiliar tires. They arrived like a convoy. Identical SUVs, mirrors shining, luggage that rolls itself. Nora, my daughter, pulled in last and hugged me before her seatbelt stopped swinging. Her eyes said, "Please don't fight." Mine said, "I won't. I'll be precise." Chase stepped out with a grin polished for sales calls and unboxed a massive speaker as if the porch were his showroom. 2 of his colleagues carried in a sloshing bait bucket and set it on the marble console in the foyer. Salt water ran a thin neon line to the rug from Oaxaca that Mara chose on a winter trip. Another draped damp wetsuits on the stair rail. Voices spread through the house as if volume were proof of ownership. "Leo, this view sells itself," Chase said, arms wide. "Make room for the team." Nora said, "The place sleeps a dozen easy." "The house sleeps," I answered. He didn't hear me. By evening, a chair had been dragged onto the dune path. The gate to the protected grasses stood unlatched. One guest stepped over the rope to take a photo. "Friend," I said. "The grasses are fragile and protected all year." He shrugged. "It's just plants. The ocean has patience for many things. Shrugging at a habitat isn't one of them." After dusk, the speaker took over the porch boards. At midnight, bass shook the lantern hooks. At 1, laughter swelled into a competition. By 3, only the sea kept its dignity. At first light, I photographed the evidence. The etched crescent on the marble from the salt water, the bruise in the rug, citrus rinds ground into the planks. I brewed coffee, cleaned nothing, and opened the binder. At 8:15, I sent a single group text. 10 a.m. on the back porch for a brief safety and beach orientation. Bring your phones for a short digital form. Lionel. At 8:20, I emailed the guest license link. Names, an emergency contact, and 1 declaration. This stay is private and not for business or promotion. At 8:37, I called Blue Tide Protective. Civil standby at 10:30. Soft presence. Body cams on. At 8:44, I left a message for Ranger Elena Ortiz at the Coastal Reserve. A quick visit at 10 would help. At 8:50, I texted Chief Wallace, the fire marshal. An occupancy reminder at 10 could prevent a formal one. At 9:55, the porch table held melon, eggs, and toast. Guests wandered out with the body language of people who expect to be served. No one had touched the license link. "Where's the espresso? Where are the omelets?" A man asked the air. "In the kitchen," I said. 2 buttons. Chase arrived last with a confidential tone. "Big favor. Marcus and Jenna, major clients, are dropping by tonight. Meet and greet. I'll cover catering. You won't even notice." "No," I said. He chuckled, then scowled. "Don't be rigid. You're retired. Let the place work." It's not a museum. It's not a venue, I said. At 10:02, Ranger Ortiz arrived in a sun-faded hat. She spoke about turtle nests, low deck lights after dusk, and no amplified music on the beach. These aren't punishments, she said. They're neighborliness to creatures who were here first. At 10:08, Chief Wallace posted the red occupancy placards for the deck and great room. I don't do arguments, he said. I do numbers. At 10:12, two blue-tide agents sat quietly on the bench by the garden gate. They carried nothing but presents. I tapped a glass. Before you enjoy the day, 10 minutes of housekeeping, then breakfast. I held up a clipboard. This is the guest license. Non-family who sleep past sundown must sign it. It's required by the foundation and the county. What foundation? Chase said, too loud for the porch. Since when do we need papers to sleep? We're family. Nora is family, I said. You are family-in-law. The foundation, not I, governs non-family use. He scoffed. So you hid the house in a shell company. We placed it in stewardship, I said. We protect places by naming what they're for. Another guest frowned. We're on vacation. Vacation is private, I said. If any part of your stay is for business, clients, or content, the license is denied. If it's personal, welcome to the Cove. Pick up a pen. Nora signed first. Two others followed, practical and quiet. Chase snatched a clipboard, tossed it back. We're not doing this. Tonight is happening, he told his team. Text the clients. Bring the banner. If you convert this porch into a showroom, I said, you violate the easement and the license you refuse to sign. You'll trigger the fire marshal and the foundation's enforcement. I don't raise my voice. I raise my documentation. You're not serious, he said. Ranger Ortiz showed two photos from the public beach entrance. Our deck lights correctly dim. A roaring sound system far downshore, not ours. Chief Wallace tapped the red placard. Deck capacity is what the footing's like. Don't make me come back with sirens. The blue-tide agents rose and moved one pace nearer the gate, neutral as shade. We proceeded simply. Those who sign and keep this a private visit are welcome for 3 days, total of 10 overnight bodies per license. Anyone here for business or clients, your rooms were never issued, and your key cards expire in 20 minutes. 2 shuttles from the Seabright Harbor Inn can relocate anyone who prefers a commercial setting. A man named Trent started to object, then swallowed it. Another, who had used the piano bench as a coaster, said, I didn't know. I'm here to rest. May I sign and finish 2 nights? Of course, I said. Help me restore the bench. Absolutely. Chase stayed at the rail, staring at the water. No one is leaving, he said. You may stay if you sign, I said, or you may host your event elsewhere. Those are the choices. He jabbed at the agents. Who invited mall cops? We're here for documentation and safety, one said evenly. We don't intervene unless asked. We can help with luggage if guests relocate. 2 harbor in shuttles eased into the driveway. You can't do this, Chase said. I'm family. You're welcome, I answered. When you choose to be a guest. For colleagues signed, apologized to Nora, and collected light luggage. 2 more followed. The rest filed toward the shuttles, some muttering, some relieved. Chase wheeled his suitcase down the hall, the sound of stubborn plastic refusing dignity. You're choosing a rule over me, he said at the door. I'm choosing truth over your schedule, I said. I'll pay the fines, he tried. You can't buy back trust, I said. Only behavior earns it. He left without looking at Nora. When the house exhaled, we began repairs. The 2 couples who had signed stayed. We lifted the piano bench and dried it carefully, then slid felt under the feet. The etched crescent remained at the edge of the marble console. Nora traced it with a fingertip. I can get a specialist, she said. Leave part of it, I said. Let the house have a story that isn't just a view. After lunch, we walked the dune path with Ranger Ortiz, retied the low rope, and reset the reminder by the deck switch for no lights after dusk in nesting season. The remaining guests combed bottle caps from the public beach and paused to watch a line of brown pelicans cross the sky without a wing beat wasted. On the way back, the taller of the two, an accountant from Denver, asked why we'd put the home into a foundation at all. Because people become their worst selves when nothing asks them to be better, I told him. Paperwork is a polite way of asking. Later, the fire marshal texted thanks for the heads up and added that he'd had to cite a downbeach rental for overcapacity and amplified music at 1 in the morning. "You're not the problem," he wrote. "You're the example that lets me point and say, that. Do it like that." I read it to Nora, and she smiled with a tired gratitude that made her look like her mother. At dusk, my neighbor Mrs. Laird waved from her boardwalk. "She's lived in the cove longer than the road has. Heard the commotion last night," she called. "Good that you kept your porch low and your lights lower." I told her we were settling back to normal. She laughed. "Normal is a tide. Doesn't come all at once." Nora and I ate simple tomatoes, bread, and a stew I keep in the freezer for days that need it. She held her spoon like a person thinking through a knot. "If I don't go to the hotel tonight," she said quietly, "he'll make me pay for it later." I took her hand. "You don't owe anyone admission to mistreatment. But I also know you like to end things on your feet." She nodded. "I'll go for one night, to close that page cleanly. Then I'm coming back. Not to take sides. To choose myself." "The house will welcome you," I said. "It knows how to make room." I didn't sleep much. The water kept a rhythm like a patient clock, and I let it count my thoughts. I thought of the day Mara and I signed the foundation papers. A friend of ours had lost a shoreline cottage to a dispute that turned a family into factions. "We're not writing a will for a house," Mara said that day. "We're writing calm into the future." She believed in names for things. Call it stewardship so the people remember what they're holding. Morning came with a sky so clear it felt newly painted. The two couples who had stayed signed the checkout line we keep on the back of the license and headed to town to see the harbor. The house hummed with repair more than silence now. Air through vents, hinges easing, boards warming to sun. I left a note for Nora and walked the beach in the slow line where wet sand holds footprints for a minute before thinking better of it. On my way back, I saw a cluster of tire marks near the public lot and followed them to the end. Someone had tried a bonfire on the wet line of last night's tide and left the ring half-built, as if the ocean had raised an eyebrow and the plan had withered. A gull picked at a paper plate as big as its chest. I carried the trash to the barrel. Ranger Ortiz's truck pulled in at the turn. "Looks like you beat me to my own job," she said. We spoke for a minute about the season. She mentioned that a handful of hatchlings had misoriented at the far end where a rental hung string lights like a carnival. "We'll talk to the owner," she said. "Some people need a rule to notice a neighbor." Back at the house, I found an email from the harbor in courteous, efficient, and without gossip. They'd moved 3 of Chase's colleagues to a business suite with conference access and comped one night for noise issues caused by someone else entirely. The manager thanked me for referring guests. The whole note was proof that commerce has places it belongs, and those places do it well when you let them. Around noon, 2 more of the original group returned to pick up things they'd left. One of them, Evan, the cocktail shaker, asked if he could take a picture from the porch. "No faces, no tags, just the water," he said. "It's quieter from here." I told him the water looks like itself from the public access, too, and walked him there. On the way, he said, "I thought loud meant successful." He looked at the horizon. "It mostly just made me tired." I wished him well. The tide was stepping out, leaving scallop shells propped like tiny dishes. Nora came back in the afternoon carrying a small overnight bag and a decision. She put the bag down by the door and sat at the table the way she used to as a kid when she wanted to ask for something big but reasonable. "He says I embarrassed him," she said. "He says I should have handled it privately." She looked up at me. "He makes everything public when it suits him, and private when it corners him." I nodded. "There's a difference between privacy and secrecy. You owe him the first, never the second." She breathed out through her nose, a small laugh that didn't need a joke. "I told him I'm staying here 3 days. I told him if he wants to visit as a guest, He can sign what everyone else signed. He said I was taking your side. I said I was taking the house's side. She looked around the room as if the walls were witnesses. And maybe mine. We kept the rest of the day plain. She read on the deck. I fixed a sticky latch. The wind walked the rosemary by the stairs. In the late afternoon, Mrs. Laird brought over a pie in a dish older than television. You made the right kind of noise, she said. The kind that sounds like a page turning. We thanked her and returned the dish with 2 slices still in it. Neighbors leave some behind on purpose. It's how you keep the conversation going without words. Just before dinner, my phone chimed. It was a message from Chase. He'd moved the meet and greet to a restaurant in town that, to their credit, had asked for a deposit and a head count and reminded him that their patio closed at 10 sharp due to neighborhood rules. Place was fine, he wrote. Clients loved the sunset. You could have hosted better, but whatever. We're booking tea times tomorrow. No apology. Just a record of events filed under the category he won something. I didn't answer. Not every message requires a reply. Some need a calendar and a clock. After dinner, Nora and I walked the beach at the edge where the foam reaches and thinks again. The sand held enough day to be warm. Far downshore, a few silhouettes sat quiet in beach chairs put exactly where chairs should be. We turned back when the light thinned to that honest blue between day and night. Will he come tomorrow? I asked. He says he will, she said. Says he'll sign with a smile and then do what he wants. We stopped at the path. He can sign with a pen, I said. But the house will read his feet. He did come in the morning, earlier than I expected, wearing a different version of the same shirt. He walked like a man trying out calm and not sure it fit. I'll sign, he said, and took the clipboard. He wrote his name, then paused at the declaration. This day is private and not for business or promotion. Define promotion, he said. Normal human conversation is fine, I said. Branded banners? Client events? Product reveals? Filming content for marketing? No. He looked past me at the deck. No one will even notice. The foundation will, I said. And so will the beach. He signed, handed the clipboard back, and exhaled through his nose in a way that pretended victory. He lasted until lunch. Then his phone lit up with messages shaped like money. The old behavior rose to its elbows, and he started telling people to swing by, just to say hello. I showed him the line in the license again. He called me inflexible. I told him the shoreline has rules because it wants to stay a shoreline. By 2 o'clock, he texted his team and moved the hello to a bar near the marina. This is exhausting, he said on his way down the steps. Order is work, I said. Chaos works you harder. While he was gone, the last 2 licensed guests checked out as agreed, hugged Nora, and promised to come back another time without a caravan. The house settled into itself. Faint breeze through the hallway, sun stepping across the floor in patient squares. I wiped down the marble and left the etched crescent alone. I like that mark now. It reminds the console that we'll keep it honest even when it's not perfect. Late that afternoon, Ranger Ortiz stopped by with a small group of volunteers carrying tiny red flags. They were marking fresh turtle crawls above the night waterline. Nora and I walked the line with them, soft-footed. A child asked if the turtles minded the wind. They mind bright light more, the ranger said. Wind belongs here. Light is a guest. The child nodded like a person who just learned a rule they will keep. That evening, the moon pulled a silver stitch across the cove and left it there. Nora played the first piece she learned at 12 on the piano, now dry and modest again. The notes landed like clean stones on the surface of a lake. We sat a while and let the water keep time. On the 3rd morning, I found Chase's key card on the porch rail with a text that read, "We're checking out of town early. Next time, be more flexible." I replied with one sentence. Next time, be more of a guest. He didn't respond. People who prefer control hear boundaries as insults. People who prefer stewardship hear them as invitations to be better. Nora poured coffee and looked at the keycard. He'll say you drove him away, she said. He'll say I let you. Let him speak to his reflection, I said. You speak to your piece. She nodded. I'll be here the full 3 days, she said. After that, if I come back, I'll sign again. Not because you're making me, because I like what it asks of me. It was a small sentence that sounded like a grown person choosing her own weather. We spent that last day doing the kind of work that makes a place grateful. I oiled the teak, tightened a loose hinge, reset the motion sensor that keeps deck lights low. Nora swept the grit from the entry, wiped the banister, pressed the rug corners flat with the palm of her hand. We ate sandwiches on the steps because steps make even simple food honest. She told me she'd be looking for a counselor on her own terms. I told her I would always keep a room and the license ready. We didn't say more because we didn't need to. By evening, the cove had returned to the sound it prefers. A long hush, a small conversation of gulls, the occasional laughter of neighbors who know when to lower the volume and let the sea be the headline. The house wasn't triumphant. Houses don't win. They keep. That's their work. This one kept the agreement Mara and I said in ink and habit. No commerce on the porch, low lights at night, paper to catch what words miss, and love that looks like boundaries. I've been called stubborn. I prefer accurate. We didn't hide the house in legal language. We gave it the right name so people would remember how to hold it. It isn't a fortress. It's a lens. It lets what's real stay real and bends everything else. Noise, entitlement, hurry. Back out to sea, where the tide has time to work on it until it comes back better or not at all. If Chase ever returns and chooses to be a guest, the pen will be ready. If he doesn't, the water will keep time without him. Either way, the house will do its listening. The dunes will keep their stitches, and the moon will lay down its silver path whether anyone is standing here to admire it or not. That's the best part of being a steward. You learn to love the things that don't depend on you while taking great care with the things that do. When I turn off the last lamp each night, I look at the etched crescent on the marble. Catches a little of the light and hands it back duller than before, which is how truth often arrives after the fact. I touch the edge of it with one finger and say goodnight to the house out loud, the way Mara used to. Then I let the tide speak. It always knows what to say.